For years, Donald Trump has gotten away with all of his law breaking. He's never been held accountable until he messed with New York State. Today, Manhattan DA Alvin Bragg there's successfully prosecuted Donald Trump on 34 counts of violating campaign finance laws. He was trying to hide hush money payments to porn star Stormy Daniels, who he cheated on with his wife after she had a baby. Here are all of the counts. There were 34 counts, and that jury read guilty 34 different times. A panel of 7 men and 5 women were unanimous in convicting Donald Trump of those payments. They believed his ex-lawyer, Michael Cohen, who testified that Trump ordered him to hide those payments. He will be sentenced on July 11th, but will remain free. Michael Sozan, a senior fellow at the Center for American Progress Action Fund, joins us right now. Also, my panel, Reese Colbert, host of the Reese Colbert Show out of Sirius XM Radio out of D.C., Dr. Greg Carr, Department of Afro-American Studies, Howard University, also out of D.C., Lauren Victoria Burke, Black Press USA out of Arlington, Virginia. We'll be joined shortly by attorney Scott Bolden, a regular legal analyst on our show as well. This was quite the interesting day here, Mike. And of course, Trump never held accountable for his actions. Today, he is now a convicted felon.
That's right. Thanks for having me on, Roland. I mean, that I think is the big headline here. This is a huge day for accountability and the rule of law. I mean, we are a nation where no one is supposed to be above the law, not even a former president. And as you said, these were unanimous verdicts, guilty on all 34 counts. This was a case that some people said from the beginning was going to be too tough to prove, but I think that the DA's team did an excellent job. Donald Trump had every opportunity to present his case. The judge was fair-minded. Trump tried to bend the rules along the way and was found in violation of a gag order 10 different times. He could have taken the stand if he wanted to set the record straight, as he says. He's still saying it's rigged. But this is a big day. It's a sober day as well. It's not really a cause for celebration. I mean, this is the first time that a president or a former president has been convicted of crimes. But this is a big day for accountability in this country and for this democracy.
Well, the thing that jumps out at me, again, the sign above the Supreme Court says equal justice under law. And the reality is this here. Republicans, they don't believe that. They have defended this man. I mean, I was driving in, listening to Sirius XM Radio, and oh Lord, the Fox News. There wasn't a single person on Fox News who was presenting a fair and balanced perspective on this. It was all kissing up to Trump. Janine Pirro, she said, "I've been in this system 32 years, and I'm just so disillusioned today." Really? Really? It was clear. First of all, I got to keep reminding people, Michael Cohen was prosecuted by the Trump Department of Justice for the same crimes. His lawyer. So to act like, oh, that was good, but prosecuting him is bad, and that's crazy.
Yep, that's right. And I was tuned into Fox News a little bit after the verdict as well. As I was going through the various channels, and you're right, they're already trying to reaffirm what Trump is saying, that this is a rigged system, that this was a rigged trial from the beginning, and that, as always, they're saying that this was coordinated somehow with Joe Biden, and that this is in some ways Joe Biden trying to interfere with the election that he allegedly feels he's going to lose. So he's got to resort to these tactics. But there's no evidence for any of that. We see right through that. And so it's another example of how so many people in this country live in 2 media ecosystems, and they can look at the same set of facts and reach wildly different conclusions. But I think that the majority of Americans, especially those who haven't chosen a side, who are open to facts and law and fairness and justice, are going to see this verdict. And I think many of them are going to have a real problem supporting Donald Trump, voting for Donald Trump in the November election. This is just a real watershed moment. I think and I hope that for the good of democracy, that Americans are going to take a really good look at this verdict.
Reese, I could not help but laugh when I saw a poor little Megyn Kelly. She sent this tweet out after the verdict. Go to my iPad, Henry. Guilty on all counts. The country is disgraced. Alvin Bragg should be disbarred. They will rue the day they unleash this lawfare to corrupt a presidential election. No, y'all will rue the day when you support a person for president who broke the law before he was elected, broke the law while he was president, broke the law afterwards.
Yeah, first of all, this conviction means that, in a sense, the 2016 election was stolen, because this relates to essentially what amounts to election fraud. And people knew that he was out there screwing porn stars while his wife was pregnant. His ass probably wouldn't have won. Okay, he wasn't that good of a candidate. All right, and so the whole notion that this is some sort of injustice, as it relates to this election, when they had 20 crazy motherfuckers who have the same positions as Donald Trump running for president, including governors, former governors, senators, and all kind of shit. They could have picked any one of them, and he was on trial. He was indicted during the entire campaign season. They could have picked any one of them. This is y'all horse. Y'all chose to ride it right off into the damn sunset with his 34 now convictions. As far as the notion that we shouldn't celebrate today, hell yeah, I'm celebrating today. Are you kidding me? For what? You have a powerful, wealthy, questionably wealthy white man who is being held to the same system that he has celebrated and he has perpetuated in terms of one of his first orders of business was getting Jeff Sessions to increase the penalties for things like weed. Hell yeah, I'm celebrating. The same motherfucker that took out a full-page ad to call for the death penalty for teenagers who were wrongfully accused, the exonerated 5. Hell yeah, I'm celebrating. I don't know if you're going to go to jail. Probably not. But today is a day to celebrate for me.
Lauren Victoria Burke, again, when you look at this case, you saw all these Republicans going to that courtroom, sucking up to Trump, dressed alike, looking like they were pledging Trump fraternity at Trump University. They all had to be hazed into doing that, defending him. And it's just, I mean, again, you listen to the whining and complaining and you go, really? I thought y'all were the law and order crowd.
Yeah, certainly they're law and order until, of course, law and order arrives at their door. I mean, it's understood that the justice system in this country is not equal. I will say, though, this is not my favorite case. This is not my favorite Trump case at all. The election interference case, in my view, is the best of the cases that have been presented. I wish these prosecutors had organized this a little bit differently, because I actually thought this was the weakest case. So I guess I sit here surprised that he was. But you
say organized, but the election interference, that's Georgia. That's a Georgia state case. This was a New York state case. Then you have the federal. So the reality is you can't organize state and federal cases.
Perhaps not, but when you're dealing with a former president of the United States and you understand that that's an unprecedented situation in American history, it might be wise to pick your cases and pick the order of the cases in a way that represents those facts and this historic moment. It is a huge moment, to say the least. And it will be interesting to see what the polls reflect from this. It will not surprise me if he benefits in some way from this, because we have seen the fact that his side really doesn't care about these types of things. And so where does that land in terms of what happens at sentencing, which happens right before the Republican convention? His side, of course, is making him the avatar of injustice, whether we agree with it or not. That's what they're doing. They're making him the avatar of injustice. And I'm uncomfortable, frankly, with, and as somebody who grew up in New York and can remember Donald Trump when I was in high school. He's been around for a long time. And I understand that this case is very specific to the Stormy Daniels situation. But when I read the individual accounts about invoices and very, very interesting things that I suspect that Alvin Bragg has not brought up before. Of course, Alvin Bragg hasn't been in office for very long. But I would say that of all of the cases, this to me was sort of the most, I wouldn't use the word frivolous. These things are against the law, and the law is what it is. But I'm uncomfortable because I do see a pattern, a growing pattern of using our legal system as a political device, as we saw with Marilyn Mosby, and I think we saw it with Andrew Gillum as well. All of a sudden, Andrew Gillum is being brought up on charges. So there's a little tit for tat going on here, whether we agree with this verdict or this set of verdicts or not, that I think gets us in sort of a dangerous back and forth in our politics, which are already extremely contentious.
But Greg, here's the deal. You've always had you've always had politicians that have actually been tried for a variety of reasons. Right now, Senator Robert Menendez is on trial in New Jersey. There have been mayors, county commissioners. Hell, I spent 6 years in Chicago, and damn near everybody there is on trial. The reality is this here. It should never matter if you're running for president. If you broke the law and the DA brings it up and then you go to trial, then guess what? That's why you actually go to trial. Now, you can disagree with it after the fact. We can look at it and look, for instance, we can say, okay, Marilyn Mosby, you convicted her for accessing her own money. In this case, he was deliberately trying to hide the payments. And again, this is what still jumps out at me. His own Department of Justice prosecuted his own lawyer for the exact same thing. Now, had his DOJ said they're not going to prosecute Michael Cohen for what he did in this case, okay, now I hear your argument. But they did. It just came back on him.
It's true. I have to agree with Lauren, though. I mean, African people in this country, in the United States, are so hardwired to not expect, to understand how the law works. In other words, it's not about what's right and what's wrong. It's about power. It's about influence. It's about wealth. That when something like this happens, which is basically an open and shut case, hell, if I was Trump's lawyers, I'd have told him to take the stand. Why? Because basically a campaign, a rally going on in the courtroom. When we see something like this, there is a moment of emotional catharsis. I was laughing. Madison McFerrin, Bobby McFerrin's daughter, who's a musician in her own right, recorded a nice little song, and people are laughing about it, and it's wonderful, right? But let's be clear. These are E-class felonies. There's his first-time offender, nonviolent, white-collar crime, paper crime. The judge, Mershon, is not going to lock this guy up. We going to put a Secret Service detail on the floor with him. I mean, he was a sitting president at the time. We're talking about a situation where, and Joe Biden tweeted this out after the verdict. He says, one way to get rid of this guy, it's going to be at the ballot box. And understand, I agree with everything that's been said about these campaigns. Little Lynn Graham has tweeted out. Jim Jordan called it a travesty of justice. Steve Scalise, that white nationalist out of Louisiana, said that this is election interference. They don't care. This is a boon for him. MAGA Mike said it's a shameful day. Look, at a time when you've got two sitting Supreme Court justices who don't give a damn, and the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court told Congress today, I ain't testifying, and they ain't got to recuse themselves. What is clear is there is no rule of law in this country. There's an illusion of a rule of law, and there are technicalities, and there is there's a legal framework that might or might not be imposed. Donald Trump was going to be convicted. He's guilty of sin. If I was his lawyer, I'd told him probably to go ahead, because remember, it was on this show. Remember, Roland, when you were covering what happened in Atlanta and he got booked, we all said he's going to turn that mugshot into a fundraiser, and he's making all kinds of money. Last thing I'll say is this. On a day when it looks like the African National Congress in South Africa, for the first time since elections have been held in 1994, are going to lose their majority, and they might have to make peace with what they're calling the Center Party, which is really the home of the old white nationalist party, the Democratic Alliance. Imagine this. The biggest news in the United States of America is that Donald Trump got convicted of 34 E-class felonies at a moment that it might even boost his campaign, and it didn't disqualify him for being president of the United States. We should take this moment right now and be very serious. And Joe Biden said it's true. Only we can get rid of him is at the ballot box.
Here's the reality, Scott, and that is this. When you look at the job of federal prosecutors, state prosecutors, I mean, again, their job is to prosecute those who broke the law. Donald Trump, he has no bottom. So the reality is, it doesn't matter what it is. He'll campaign off of anything. He doesn't have any morals, values, principles, decency, ethics. It doesn't matter. And so I think what has often happened is, I think he actually has escaped accountability because of that. Remember, it was Senator Sozan Collins of Maine who said after the first impeachment, oh, I think he's now learned his lesson. No, he didn't. And so the reality is you can't factor that into the equation. This guy doesn't care, so therefore you must hold him accountable. Damn any other thing that may happen outside of that.
And the criminal justice system is about holding them accountable. So your guests, God bless them, and they're friends of mine, and the other commentators who live in this world of politics, and they have political answers, right? Okay, it can be political accountability at the ballot box, right? But if you break the law, if you have criminal intent to break the law, then the criminal justice system is built to hold you accountable for criminal conduct. And the Court of Appeals, a grand jury, prosecutors, defense, judges, Court of Appeals judges have all looked at this case and said, let it go forward. This is the criminal justice system at work. And this was a prosecutor's verdict within 12 hours. I mean, this case wasn't even close. And so I think both systems work. And Donald Trump can con America or con the GOP and RNC and con 45% of the voters in America, but you cannot con the criminal justice system. You cannot con those who care about democracy and care about what is righteous and moral and good, and that they don't want to reprobate essentially to be running the country, who has run the country before, right? And so this duality is part of our democracy. They're not counter to one another. And so I think both are important. And I will tell you this, Roland, lastly, anybody that thinks that Judge Marchant, who's been the subject of vicious attacks by Donald Trump, his family been attacked by Donald Trump, that he's not thinking about putting Donald Trump in jail. I don't know many people walking around with 34 felony counts, regardless of what you think about the case or the facts, who are walking around without getting any jail time. It is a real possibility. Now, watch what I say. I told you this a year ago. I told others a year ago. This is the process. Watch and see what Marchant does. It may not be soon because there are going to be appeals. They're going to stay sentencing. They're going to be filing papers for sentencing memorandums and what have you. He may not go to jail right away. He may get through the election. But incarceration on the sentencing guidelines in New York is real, it's valid, and it's a real probability with Judge Marchant.
Mike, I saw you shaking your head agreeing with Scott there.
Yep, I agree with what a lot of what was just said. I also, from experts that I've read and people who have worked in New York State, jail time is standard for cases like this, for convictions like this, for other defendants. It would not be out of the ordinary based on what's happened in the past many, many years. I also agree that, chances that Trump will likely avoid that having to actually be incarcerated through his appeal after the election, et cetera. But I also think I was agreeing that, of course, we can look at the politics of this. We can look at this through the legal system lens. But, one thing that I think is really important here, again, to emphasize is there is some degree of accountability here. And many, many Americans have been hoping for that vis-a-vis Donald Trump. He has continued to bend every law and rule and norm his way for many, many years. And Americans are getting sick and tired of that. And so this is a good day for accountability, where it shows that no one is above the law. And the other point I'll just make is that I agree that some of the other cases, the prosecutions that are ongoing, either in Georgia or the D.C. prosecution for Trump's plot to overthrow the election, or even the prosecution that's ongoing regarding Trump keeping the classified documents. Those are more important in some ways. But they all go back to the central point that he continues to break the law in order to gain power and then to hold on to power. And that's been a throughput for much of his career, and certainly since he ran for president in 2016. And so today, I think, is a big day for accountability.
Mike Sozan, I certainly appreciate you joining us. Thanks a lot.
COVID happened, poor people were dying at a rate already of 800 people a day. Before COVID, if you went to a funeral every single day, It would take you 600 years to attend all the funerals of the people who will die from the ravages of policy violence, poverty, and low wages in America in just 1 year. It would take you 2 years and 19 days to go to all of the funerals of the people that will die today, and oftentimes silence. Nobody talks about this political genocide, but we are determined today to remember their death and be a resurrection of voting power and voice power like never before.
Economic justice and saving this democracy are deeply connected. We, as a nation, must listen to the demands of the poor, who are pushing and will continue to push political candidates and elected leaders to lift from the bottom so that everybody can rise.
We are the poor, the marginalized, and the underpaid. And we are taking one step forward to say that everybody has a right to live.
Poverty is not the fault of those who are impoverished. It is caused by those who make the policy.
There are over 135 million poor and low-wage, low-income people in this nation.
The biggest block of potential voters by far is low-income, low-wage voters.
I can't afford medicine. Sometimes I have to skip because of the cost.
The farm worker community is tired of the violence imposed upon us by greed, exclusion, and denial of basic human rights.
Those folk that represented by that casket, poor and low-wage workers who are the most moral people in this country because they go to work every day believing, even though going to work is hazardous to their health.
I'm tired of working 70 to 80 hours a week and still not have money for the necessity of bills. I'm tired of getting sick and not being able to go see the doctor. Having to make a choice to pay between rent or the light bill or food or clothes.
You cannot claim to care about families and a culture of life and then do everything in your power to rob people of equal access to resources and to force them to live in poverty.
Leadership of both parties had waged war on poor people and low-wage workers.
And this government has treated people experiencing poverty, including their military families, with disdainful, deliberate, malicious neglect.
So the truth is that my son died from poverty.
We refuse to accept poverty as the fourth leading cause of death.
The fourth leading cause of death in this, the richest country in the world.
We march today for our children and the generations to come.
And we need to do it with the loudest voices possible, the biggest actions possible.
We will voice our demands and register our vote.
When we stand up and when we stand together, things change.
There is the electorate that is, and then there is the electorate that should be.
34 million eligible poor and low-income voters did not vote in 2016. If just 20% of those voters in swing states were mobilized around an agenda, they could change the political outcome of every election. So we're launching the most massive voter mobilization and turnout campaign in history of poor and low-wage voters, allies, and religious leaders.
People are dying, but we know it doesn't have to be this way. And so we are calling on everyone to join us in this Poor People's Campaign, a national call for more revival.
We are here, we will be seen, we will be heard, and our power will be felt. We don't need to be an insurrection. We are a resurrection that will be felt across this country. Are you ready? 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 We are a resurrection, and we are ready.